a lot of stories are being written in the media and talked about in the media about Ben Johnson 25 years ago when he broke the record in the 100 meters in Seoul, and the resulting controversy that happened afterwards with the positive drug test, the steroid being snozolol. 25 years ago, Mr. Pound, do you have any recollections of that?
Oh, I certainly remember it. As a race, it was extremely exciting. And, at the end of it, when you saw that he won, and you knew well before the end that he was going to win, you look up and see the time at 9.79. It was just unbelievable. So it was exciting, and then as high as that excitement was, the depression, once it became clear that he was going to be disqualified, was equally deep.
Yeah, the thing about it is it was such a dramatic high for the entire country of Canada, and then such that incredible fall. So it wasn't just, I think anybody who had watched that race and found out what happened 2 days later must have felt like they gotten punched in the stomach. Such a letdown, because for Canada that was arguably the biggest moment, or one of the biggest moments anywhere in Canadian sports history.
Well, winning the number one event in the number one sport at the Olympic Games is quite an achievement, and I think everybody identified with it. And he was, the sort of the little guy beating the big American machine, and it was. I think everybody felt wonderful about it, and then because of that, so disappointed once it turned out that he'd been doped.
Now, am I correct in saying, your positions later on with the International Olympic Committee and the World Anti-Doping Association, this thing happened before you had those two jobs, or at least had moved into those roles?
Yeah, at the time, when I was on the executive of the IOC, but my responsibility was to, try to generate money from television rights and marketing and stuff like that. And I never got involved in the doping side of things at all. It really wasn't until Ben, or at least the team, asked me if I would help Ben in front of the IOC Medical Commission, and I did that. It was kind of a one-off. And it wasn't until 10 years later with the Tour de France scandal that I eventually got involved in WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency.
Can you lead us through what happened? Because this thing was happening in real time. It was so fast. I mean, there's stories about how Caroline Leatherin, who was the chef de mission at the time for Canada, and that she had to go retrieve the medal from Ben. Can you lead us sort of, again, your role with the IOC and Ben, and maybe even Caroline Leatherin, I don't know how many other people would have been involved. Lead us through what happened afterwards, at least after when it became known he had a positive.
Well, once we knew that, I found out about it at a lunch that Sam Ranch, the IOC president, was hosting for the board of directors of Coca-Cola and their wives. And I had come back from the diving where we went to see whether Greg Louganis would recover from whacking his head on the board in the semifinals. And I got back, and Sam Ranch is agitated. He said, "Have you heard the news? Have you heard the news?" And I said, "Well, yes, I was at the diving. I saw it." Louganis said, No. He said, it's worse than that. And I said, I kept saying, "Oh, it's terrible." I said, "Has somebody died?" And he said, No, it's worse than that. Ben Johnson has tested positive." And oh my God, we had to sit through this lunch where all the Americans were saying, "Isn't it nice that your nice Ben Johnson beat the dreadful Carl Lewis," and all that. And so as soon as that was over, I went down and called Caroline Leatherin. She said, "Have you heard?" And I said, "I've heard." She said, "Well, what do we do?" And I said, "Well, have you sent somebody to be there when the B sample is analyzed?" He gets off on a technicality. And she said, "Yes, we have somebody there." So they all came down to my hotel room. Charlie Francis, Caroline, the athletics team manager, our team doctor, Charlie Francis, gang, we sat around. I said, "All right, well, tell me what you know." And they said, "Well, there was something slipped under Caroline's door in the middle of the night saying, your athlete has tested positive, and the B sample will be analyzed at noon, by then, noon the same day." And so I said, "Well, what did they find?" And they said, "Well, it sounds like it's an anabolic steroid, and they haven't told us yet, but the rumor is that it's stenozolol," at which point Charlie Francis, who had a dreadful toothache and was feeling bad anyway, said, stenozolol, stenozolol. I don't want my runners on stenozolol on race day. It tightens them up. Uh-oh. And the problem here may not be whether Ben has taken anything, but what. And we went through the possible defenses, of which there were very few, and made those presentations to the IOC Medical Commission, which listened quietly. And then at the end of our presentation, the chairman of the biochemistry and doping subsection said, would we be interested in the scientific results of the tests? Now, if you ever get that kind of a question as a lawyer, you know you're cooked.
Mm-hmm.
And we were. So I said, well, listen, I'm not sure I'll understand them. I'm a tax lawyer. But our chief medical officer will probably understand. So there was a certain amount of scientific dialogue. And I looked at our chief medical officer and I said, what have we just heard? And he said, well, we've heard that they found stenozolol, and that this is not the first time that he's used anabolic steroids, because his whole renal cortex function is depressed. What happens when you've got artificial testosterone in your system is that the body shuts down and says, okay, we've got enough testosterone here, we don't need to produce anymore. Down goes that function. So it was pretty clear, and then the next morning, the IOC Executive Board got a recommendation from the Medical Commission that he should be disqualified, which he was, and Caroline, as the chef de mission, was ordered by the IOC to go and retrieve the medal, which I can remember her saying is one of the toughest things she's ever had to do.